Sometimes we are so impressed by others that we dim our own light. And in doing so, the world misses out on our unique gifts and talents.
It's time to pivot in your confidence, career, and compensation with the 5-Minute Career Hack Podcast every Monday and Thursday. Now, get ready for a special interview curated just for you. Welcome to the 5-Minute Career Hack Podcast, where we bring you actionable tips and insights to accelerate your career journey. I'm your host and career wellness strategist, Candace, and each week we delve into conversations with industry experts and thought leaders to provide you with the strategies and tools you need to thrive in your career. And this week is not going to be anything different. So as you know, I always say we are about no fluff, all action. So before we hop right in, I'm going to ask you to do me one quick favor. Hit that subscribe button and make sure that you are made aware of all of our upcoming videos. We release 2 videos a week sharing actionable hacks with you on how you can elevate your career. So now we're going to hop right in, and today's guest is Victor Barnes. He is a retired Fortune 100 Division Chief Financial Officer with a global career spanning Atlanta, New York City, Johannesburg, and Toronto at the Coca-Cola company. He's also an executive coach, board member, and trailblazer dedicated to sharing wisdom and empowering the next generation of leaders. Victor's upcoming book, Chasing Credibility, Navigating the Path to Trust and Influence, offers invaluable insights into building authentic connections and credibility. Victor, welcome to the show. We are so excited to have you today.
Thank you so much, Candace. Thank you for having me here. I appreciate it.
Yes. So I'm excited about this conversation. But before we hop into the questions, I know you just didn't arrive here on a 5-Minute Career Hack Podcast, as I always say. So tell us about you and your career journey.
Well, one of the things about talking about my career I like to do is make it brief and allow the organic conversations to come. So I'm going to cover my career kind of from the beginning and this arc and where I am now. And I would look at my career starting off like a blank slate. I was clueless. I was a first generation college grad. I'm the youngest of 7, and none of my siblings had gone to college yet. And I just didn't know what I didn't know. And then I find myself in big A CPA world, and I cannot even read a stock table. I'm an accountant major degree have an accounting degree from one of the top universities in the US. I'm about to be a CPA, and I can't read a stock table. That's me beginning to understand what I did not know, given my background. Then I arrived at a point in my career where I felt like a duck paddling away, but not going anywhere. And this is like the mid-career place. Like, I'm not getting into all the weeds of all the jobs. That's boring.
Yeah.
I realized that there were people ascending and getting new jobs. And I remember talking to a VP level person saying that particular phrase about a duck in the water going nowhere. And that was just before I decided I was going to spend some time talking to people, trying to find out what I can do to get in those whitewater rapids and start moving. And for me, that meant going back and getting my MBA. That's not what everyone has to do. I never recommend just outright get an MBA. There's no quick fix. That was just my particular answer that worked for me. I got my MBA. I felt like I then had a sense of where all the pieces are. I wasn't suddenly knowledgeable about everything, but I had a better sense of my strengths, what I could do, what resources are out there to get at the information I didn't know. And then the last thing I'll mention here is bump to a person that had already risen to the level of being on the board director. And he began to ask me, so when are you going to be a CFO at Coca-Cola? And I'm like, dude, that's not happening. No one in the history of the company that's Black has ever been a business unit CFO. 5 years later, that was me.
Nice. Talk about blazing trails.
Yeah. And I don't want to say the story with this idea that I was so exceptional that I was the only one could do it. Many, many people could have, but I also had something in my favor. I don't know how this played out. The first Black person and woman CFO of the Coca-Cola company was in that seat.
Mm.
I believe it's possible that I got a look for the opportunity given that particular person representation at the company, right? So I want to make sure that I broaden that story a little bit, not
Yeah.
pointed at me, but other factors. And so that's what inspires me to do what I'm doing now, to inspire others.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I love the fact that you mentioned that somebody else, I mean, you're a trailblazer, but somebody else helped blaze that trail for you. And now in the work that you do,
Absolutely.
you're paying it forward. That's what leadership is
Yes,
all about. Yes. Love it. So listen,
absolutely.
Victor,
Absolutely.
you said something, and and I think when we did our pre-conversation a couple weeks ago, I
Mhm.
told you that I had been following you around on LinkedIn for years, not knowing
Yeah.
that we had like
Uh-huh.
a personal connection as well through my godmother. I don't mind saying that.
Right.
And so one of the things that I saw you say on LinkedIn one day, and it really stuck with me, and I'd love to hear you just talk a little bit more about that as it pertains to your career journey. You said the higher I went in positions, the more I realized how much I did not know. And obviously,
Yes.
having to lean on your network and the people around you, just kind of tell us what that looked like as it pertains to your career journey of saying, you know what? The more I climb, the more I realize I don't know. I've got to lean on my network. I've got to lean on my team, my peers, my bosses. What did that look like? Like, what was the discovery
Right.
process for that?
Right. So a very pivotal moment happened when I asked that CFO of the Coca-Cola company, who's on the board of directors of Delta Airlines, sits in board meetings at the Coca-Cola company. And I asked her what it's like to be at that level where you are in the room in the board. And she said, Victor, there's always another level.
Oh,
That particular statement for me was kind of a culminating feeling about how I felt as I had done 13 different roles over 26 years at the Coca-Cola company. And every time I arrived at another one, it was just another time for me to get that reinforcement that I don't know crap. And I embraced that
yeah,
because it made me hungry. It
yes.
made me hungry. And that, the working for a multinational company was full of those opportunities to get in spaces where you felt like you were not starting over, but just a fresh new start to look at the business in a different way. But I believe that translates to anything,
Yes.
whether it's a teacher. My wife's an educator. My daughter has been an educator. My daughter-in-law has been an educator. And we talk about this juxtaposition of being an educator versus a finance professional. And I'm like, you know what? It's not that different in many respects. And so just being hungry and curious, that's what I would say in regards to the thing that I said. And I have this little picture that I did as a diagram. My career is a continuing realization that I don't know blank.
Exactly, right?
And so when I was in my last role at the Coca-Cola company, I was the global CFO of the McDonald's business, and I was visiting my former team in Toronto, and I made that statement. And then one of the individuals asked me, so Victor, when do you know crap? When do you ever get to that point? I basically reflected back to what that CFO told me back in the day. I said, I'll let you know when I find out. In other words, it's a never ending process if you allow it to be.
Yes, no, that's so good. That's so good. And I love there's always another level. And
Mhm.
sometimes that is in position, and sometimes that is not sometimes, a lot of times that is in mindset as well. And
That is
so,
absolutely it.
thinking about the levels where you are now, I think you refer to the term you're in rewirement. So that's
Yes.
another level that you're in rewirement, and now embarking upon the journey of becoming an author. You've got an amazing book that you're going to tell us about that's coming out. I think in order for you to embrace the levels that you have to elevate to in your mind,
Mhm.
positions follow most times. Sometimes it's out of
Yes.
order, but positions follow. It requires you to embrace who you are, which I know you're going to talk to us today about this pursuit of authenticity. But before we hop into that, tell us what inspired you to write your book.
So it was a point in time when my wife, daughter, and then 3-year-old grandson were on a quick vacation in Orlando, and we watched a Netflix movie, Barry.
Okay.
Barry was a movie about President Obama at New York University, and he's touring a project housing complex with a classmate, and he's taking him on a tour in this slum type building. And the character in brief basically said, now that you've seen this, it makes me wonder how I got to where I am. Because I grew up around the same environment, the same situations, et cetera, et cetera. And I won't get into the details of all the lurid things they saw. And I asked myself that, right? What about me makes me have attained the things that I've attained, given where I came from? And I've not written this sob story. Oh my God, I was so poor, and I, was stuck. That's not the point. But I did wonder, and I started thinking of the things because I knew I didn't do it on my own. I started thinking about the kindergarten teacher who's still in my life today. She has purchased a book. We just texted 2 days ago from this recording, right? I think about my basketball coach as an 8th grader who took us on trips. My first trip out of Chicago was with him. And I became a youth basketball coach, right? So returning from Orlando from that trip, having had that thought about what is it that helped me get to where I am, given where I came from, and not just for the purpose of me exploring that, how can I give that to others? How can I share some of the things and uncertainties that I faced along the way, fears, uncertainties, not knowing what I didn't know, and help others be better than me? That became my focus. So I said, I'm going to start writing these because I've seen and heard this several times, Candace, how when you know that someone else has walked a path or seen or experienced things that you may be experiencing or have doubts, it can be a load off your back. Yeah. I'm not alone. Someone else has been here and they've gotten to this place. So I began writing my newsletter. And people would say, Victor, when are you going to write the book? And I'm like, I don't know. I just right now, I'm just spitting out this knowledge that I want to share. And one day it may result in a book. But that's really the best way to explain what inspired me to write a book. It's that long string that I can pull from that day that I said, I'm going to start just writing a newsletter.
Yeah. No, and I definitely have been one to, like I told you, I followed you around on LinkedIn before I even knew that I really knew you. And those newsletters were extremely inspiring. And I'll tell you, one of the things that I would feel was I definitely felt your genuine, a genuine connection to you through your newsletters. And it was just this level of authenticity that you expressed through being vulnerable in some of those newsletters as well, that I think is a function and an element of, and I know I'm repeating the word authenticity, but it's a function and element of authenticity is being vulnerable. But I think even more than that, because, people can get maybe intimidated by a title. Victor, the
Absolutely.
CFO of Coca-Cola, you were a big brand with a big title. But what I noticed was that your words were meeting people right where they were.
Thank you.
Vulnerable. And I would guess that that's something that you practiced in leadership as you were going through various roles of, I'm still Victor, who is from Chicago, and I am who I am. This title has nothing to do with my character. It's just me elevating myself.
Absolutely.
So in your experience, and like I said, it's all about genuine connections. That's what I felt. But I love to hear
Absolutely.
more about when you think about this pursuit of authenticity, which was a journey for you. In your
Mhm.
experience, what role did authenticity play in you forming genuine connections with those who you served or who you worked alongside? And then ultimately, that being one of the things that helped you establish credibility.
Yes. Well, thank you. And, as an aside, as you and I have discussed, I purposely speak about this pursuit of authenticity as opposed to the word itself, because sometimes that word just lands so heavy on people. And I don't want to go too far down the path of why I view that, but I'll say this. There's an article that and it is titled, I wanted to write it down. It is called The Enigma of Being Yourself, a critical examination of the concept of authenticity. This is a research article. It's deep,
Look,
right? Like, is it really good to be authentic? And what does it mean? I'm not saying it's not, but sometimes there are some mixed thoughts about it. And I will be talking about that in depth in the book. Not enough time to talk about it deeply here. But here's what I'll say about authenticity as relates to the approach of gaining trust.
Mm.
And there's a quote from a lady that I came across as I began writing my book. The quote is from a person that I saw on an interview on LinkedIn. And she said, and I quote, "I try to tell the story as it happened, not as how I want it to be remembered."
Mm.
So take my basketball team, 10-year-old girls that I coached, 13th in the nation, back to back at age 10 and 11. And I'm teaching them a skill. Do I A, teach it as if I expect them to know it outright and then get angry when they don't do it properly? Or B, share with them my struggles of being able to shoot with my offhand. I'm right-handed, trying to shoot my left hand. I'm trying to show them a left-hand layup. And I would say, here are the struggles that I had. Here's what would mix me up. I would give them that sense of, you can do this. And that, I believe, translates to education. Think about the child that is given a sense of, I believe in you, versus the child that's given remedial work because, well, that's all you can do, right? That's what when I talk about being a CFO or an educator, I believe this concept of, to your point, meeting people where they are is so crucial to instill confidence. And I probably gained more about leadership lessons coaching 9 and 10-year-old girls than any class I ever took. And the coolest story I tell in my book is a question I ask of a former player who was on that team that finished 13th in the nation. She played pro ball in Europe. She's now a college coach, assistant coach in Florida. And when she found out I was writing a book, I asked her, hey, I've never asked anyone that played for me over a decade ago, what was it like playing for me? I'm actually going to share on LinkedIn the full context of what she said, but a few sound bites. I never left practice feeling like I didn't belong.
Mm.
You were tough on us, but you did it with love. You made us feel like more than a team, but more like a family.
Mm.
You respected us, and we respected you. That was actually the lead concept that I worked with on those young ladies. Just because I'm this authority, think about CFO with a title or a coach, I can come down heavy, me in control, you the minion. That's not going to get the best out of them.
That's right.
So these are the lessons that I think that are so core to authenticity, because there's some mixed things. Is this podcast episode called Being Well, the pursuit of authenticity, talks about. There's sometimes this conflict between what's going on inside and the you that you feel you need to express outwardly.
Mm.
If you're in a profession, and you feel like you need to show up as this perfectionist that's got all the answers, but inside you're insecure, it comes out
Yep.
in some ways. But if you're a person that knows that you had uncertainties along the way and now you're at that level of a CFO and you're teaching a lesson, here's what it was like for me when I didn't understand this concept and I didn't know it. All of a sudden, you lowered that me up here, you down there. Those were the ways I approached it. And I didn't think of it as being authentic as much as just being real.
Yes.
I realize that's maybe synonyms, but that's why I just want to kind of bring the term down. And it's just being present, meeting people where they are. I think you said it perfectly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, just you sharing, first, thank you for sharing the story. And I look forward to that when you share the full anecdote on and but I think even just the response that you got, those were hacks in themselves that leaders can take and say, this is how you
Absolutely.
this is how you, the part about love, like you approached us with love. A lot of times we're just so focused on the result that we forget about the person. And so your ability
Preach.
it's so true. I'm actually reading a book right now called Love is a Business Strategy. And I'm like, man, I get that organizations are, or, teams in the basketball sense are there to accomplish a result or, impact the P&L. But there are people that are going to help them do that. And we have to approach them.
Absolutely.
Again, with love and where they are. And you even sharing just kind of talking a little bit about people will respond or they say things not thinking about presently what's going on, but more thinking about how they want it to land on the person who's listening. And that's creating those narratives and sometimes perpetuating false narratives.
Absolutely.
People don't undo that if they don't have, I mean, they can, but they get there much slower if they don't have a leader that models it for them. And you telling your showing your basketball team and being vulnerable, saying like, look at this bad shot I make, right? Like, that
Absolutely.
takes away that I don't want to be vulnerable because I might be judged or I'm afraid to be vulnerable, afraid to be myself. When you model that for them, it takes away that sense of fear and that judgment. So before I ask my last question, I just want to have you give me one more hack. And this could be for me too, because we're all humans. I'm sure even in your life, personally and professionally, we're still, battling our inner thoughts and still building confidence day by day. But what advice would you give to people who struggle being their authentic selves due to fear of judgment or rejection?
Right. So the thought that comes to mind is the thematic narrative that guided me in writing the book. And early on in the process, I had to provide the publisher with, what is your tension statement, Victor? And I had to be explained, what is a tension statement? And they explained, and mine is this, without me getting into the details of the definition. Sometimes we are so impressed by others that we dim our own light. And in doing so, the world misses out on our unique gifts and talents. I pieced that together from a few things, first of all, that I felt, right? For sure. And then, you know how when you buy a car or someone in your family buys a car and you see it everywhere? The word authentic kept popping up everywhere. 2023, Merriam-Webster, word of the year is authentic. I didn't know that before I started writing the book. I was telling a colleague of mine that I was writing a book, and he sent me this article that telling me about that. Here's a hack within what I just said: letting people know what you're doing. There's a saying, Candace, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
And who knows you too.
On its head a little bit.
Yeah.
It's who knows you.
That's it.
Right?
That's it.
What are you doing? What are you trying to do? What are you working on? How are you approaching it? And by sharing that with others, you've now multiplied potentially the number of people who are helping you on your journey. They're sending you an article about, hey, I know you're working on this book. Here's something. That's what started happening to me. Still at this level I'm at now, I'm discovering that that same hack continues to work. And lastly, please don't be overly impressed by me. Not the title. I'm always trying to notch that down. I'm wearing this t-shirt right now, Argyle Gardens. That's the neighborhood I grew up in, Chicago.
Love it.
For a reason, because I'm still that kid, right? It's not the shine that you see is there's a lot of things that went into it, a lot of people that helped, a lot of people that gave me wisdom that says, hey, you can get to a higher level. Don't tempt down what you think you can achieve. So I know that was longer than maybe the answer I should have provided, but that's where it comes from, the heart.
Yes, no, that was a perfect answer, and we say that often too. A 5-minute career hack is not it's not who you know, it's who knows you. And when you started the answer, what kind of stuck with me was when you talked about being impressed by other people, but then that's when it comes more about them. So you're not able to even celebrate your wins. You're not even able to be yourself because you're trying to compare yourself to this person who you revere. And while you will get insights from those people, that helps give you inspiration for what you're trying to do. At the end of the day, they're going home to their families, you're going home to your family. And when you wake up in the morning, you got to make God and yourself proud. And so, again, the other part for me that I thought about was you don't even know these people who we revere. We don't even know what their struggles may be either. They may be struggling with some confidence issues. So we really can't compare ourselves to anyone but ourselves. And as long as you know that the end result of what you want to improve, whether it's got to be about you. It's got to be about you.
Right.
And not being afraid to, be judged by those who we don't know their story. Sometimes we're looking at people and they're in chapter 10 and you're in chapter 2, but you're comparing yourself to their chapter 10.
Exactly. That's so yes. That's a great point. That's a great point.
Fantastic answer. It was right on point. There's so many hacks that can come from that. I'm sure we're going to have all kind of shorts and reels that come out of what you shared. And Victor, so from our pre-show, I remember when I first talked to you, I was like, man, I just don't want this to end. I'm going to I so much I can learn, where we'll definitely be hopefully continuing the conversation in 5 more minutes with Candace. But I appreciate you sharing from your abundance today. I appreciate your authenticity. I'm excited about the release of your book. I cannot wait to read it. Before I ask you the last question, tell us, how can we find Victor and how can we get a copy of this book?
So I have a website where you can purchase the book. It's chasingcredibility.com. Easy. One word, one string, www.chasingcredibility.com. The pre-sale is going on now, but by the time this episode airs, you'll still be able to get the book. And I really appreciate you, Candace, helping me to get the word out about what I'm trying to do. That's foremost what I want to do, which is to connect with more people on this fantastic forum that you all provide, the 5-minute career hack. Absolutely a joy to be here.
Yes, it's our pleasure to serve alongside you. I love just the thought process of what you're writing and talking about. I strongly feel that people need to hear more about it. And so it's, without even thinking, this is a platform where we should be sharing. So I'm excited to share your work with our audience for sure. So Victor, as I always ask every guest that comes on the podcast, what would you leave the listeners today as your final 5 words?
Let your why guide you. Let your why got you.
I don't have a response to that. That is a bar all by itself. Not somebody else's why, not Victor's why, not Candace's why, 5-minute career hacks why. What is your purpose? What are you after? Let that be your guide versus
Absolutely.
the comparison that we do with others. Victor, thank you so much for sharing today. It has been a pleasure to chat with you today, and I look forward to more fruitful conversations in the future.
Yes, definitely. Take care.
Thank you.
I truly hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we enjoyed doing it for you. However, it doesn't have to end there. Come on over to our Facebook group community right now for free. You're going to get exclusive content that we weren't able to include in this episode as well as past episodes. We've got challenges, we've got research, we've got lives, you name it, all for you in bite-sized chunks so that you can continue this development journey. Go ahead, click the link right now in the description show notes, and we'll see you there.